Okay, so this is going to be a three-part series in which I talk about my top 3 variations for squat, bench, deadlift, why that variation is good, when you should program that variation, and for what kind of athletes that variation should be, because not all variations are for all kind of athletes, right? So in this video today, I'm going to talk about squats because it's the first out of the 3 lifts, and I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible. So I'm not going to be rambling a lot about why the variation is good. Okay, so the first variation I think everyone should be doing at some point in their programming should be a pause squat, right? And the reason why is because that gives you a lot of kinesthetic awareness of where the segments of your body are in space, okay? So for a lot of people, depth is an issue when it comes to powerlifting. So the fact that you're pausing where you should know if you're in or not depth is going to give you the awareness of knowing how your body feels, how your hip feels, how your knees feels, how far your knees are tracking forward. And other things are going to help you be more consistent and more replicable when it comes to hitting depth on your squat, and also it's going to make you pause in the position which you're probably weakest, right? So besides giving you awareness of where to pause, you're going to feel more comfortable and more secure when you pause. When it comes to when to program a pause squat, you really can do it any time of the microcycle as you want. I usually tend to program pause squats closer to competition as a secondary variation. Maybe when in my first day I'm doing competition squats, and in my second day I'm looking for a little bit of a lighter variation, which I'm forced to use lighter loads, but I'm still being very specific when it comes to doing a lower squat with a belt, with knee sleeves, with all of the things that I'm doing in competition. I'm just pausing in the bottom, and therefore I'm forcing myself to use lighter loads, still working on my technique, working on my positioning, and getting stronger in the whole. And of course, I personally don't have issues with depth, never have. But if you do have, it's going to really help you to feel more confident pausing in the bottom. The fact that which kind of lifters need to do this, if you're like a dive bomber in a squat, if you like really bounce the squat out of the bottom, the pause squat is a huge variation for you. If you often get called on depth, of course, huge variation for you. If you're inconsistent, maybe some people are doing a little bit more of a deeper squat in some sets, more of a little bit of a higher squat. If you are not very consistent when it comes to your depth, pause squats are the main variation for you. So in that case, I would definitely do that in the off season, in my primary day, to just get a better feel for where to pause. And I feel I'm rambling, so I'm going to get into variation number 2, which is going to be for me the high bar squat. So when I spoke about the pause squat, I'm mostly talking about technique and neurological cues, more so than actually building muscle for long-term progression. When it comes to the other side of the coin, like actual long-term progression when it comes to strength training, building muscle is a huge part. And the benefits of the high bar squat is you're going to have a more upright torso, so you're going to be limiting a little bit more of the posterior chain help when it comes to squatting, so glutes and hamstrings. And adductors, which is a hip extensor, are going to be less active when it comes to high bar squat. You're going to be, of course, forced to use lighter loads, and more of the percentage of the load you're pushing is going to be managed by your quads. This is going to mean that if your quads are doing more work, they're going to get more growth out of the high bar squat. Benefit number 2 of the high bar squat is that a lot of people tend to get wrist and elbow pain due to low bar squatting, and of course, for some people, it's not very natural. So just raising the bar a little bit more is going to make your hands and your shoulders feel a lot more comfortable, and this might help you to accumulate more quality volume in a yet pretty specific pattern for squatting that you might not get from low bar squatting. And the third thing that I think the high bar squat is really effective for, and that people really benefit from, is that if you tend to tip over on your squat or you're very posterior chain dominant, doing more high bar squats is going to help teach you to stay in your quads, right? So if you're coming out of the bottom, to not kick your hips back in order to use more of your posterior chain, it's going to teach you to stay in your quads and use your quad, push the ground, besides, of course, growing your quads. So long term, I think high bar squats are really, really beneficial for, I think, virtually any powerlifter. When it comes to when to program high bar squats, I think they are suited for any time in the program, but I think virtually everyone should be doing high bar squats in their off season. Off season is the main time for high bar squats because then then you're going to be able to reap the benefits of accumulating more volume with a less invasive variation, but yet pretty specific. You're going to really build your quads, and they are great for doing high reps. So I think in the off-season, hyper squats are pretty mandatory if you're a powerlifter, because I think, first off, I think nobody likes to do low bar squats year-round and 2 or 3 times a week. And besides that, I think a lot of people are going to be a little bit aching, a little bit in pain for all the time doing low bar squats. They also don't really, I mean, doing low bar squats for a lot of reps tends to get you out of positioning, and you tend to be using a little more hips as the sets go on. So I think high bar squats are a more replicable and a little bit more tolerable way to do volume long term. Okay, and variation number 3 is going to be the tempo squat, and this is going to be somewhat similar to the reason why we program a pause squat, but different. And there's a little bit of an extra benefit for tempo squat. Number 1 is going to be, again, kinesthetic awareness, so you're going to be more aware of where your segments are in space. So if you're slowing down the negative rep, you're really going to be noticing how your hips open up, where your depth is, where it's not, and how everything feels as you're descending. Especially if you're like a dive bomber or if you have issues with depth, tempo squats are really big to just manage that. Other than that, a lot of people tend to have issues with phrasing and upper body positioning when it comes to low bar squats. Maybe some people struggle to get into positioning, some people struggle to get tight into position. So a lot of people think that low bar squatting is just getting the bar a little bit lower on your back, and that's not all it is. Like, the fact that you're getting the bar a little bit lower and it's no longer on top of your scapulas means that you have to tighten your back a whole lot more. So the fact that you have to retract the scapulas, pull your shoulders back, do as you were doing like a behind the neck pull down, you have to do the same. You have to tighten the bar into your back. All of the things tend to be a little bit overlooked, and if you have more time in the descent of the squat, you're going to be having more time to think about different cues. And the same thing as of the pause squat, if you're forced to use lighter loads, then you can diminish fatigue a little bit more and you can be recovered a little bit better, but also you have more time to think about all the things you're doing. Because if you're dropping down with 95% of your max, it's pretty unlikely you're going to be thinking about all of the cues that you should be thinking of. When it comes to when to program tempo squats, again, you can program tempo squats whenever the hell you want. I think they're more useful in the in-season because, again, I tend to not program low bar squats year-round, and especially I tend to not program more than 1 time a week low bar squat if I am at least 3 months away from competition. If you're maybe 3 months in, so 2 weeks out, I am probably going to be low bar squatting more than 1 time a week. But if I'm away from that, I tend to not. Therefore, I tend to use the competition squat when I am just squatting 1 time, just low bar squatting 1 time a week. Therefore, you can of course use that low bar squat day as a pause squat or a tempo squat if you need to work on some of the same things, or you just want to accumulate more volume and reduce fatigue. But also, I think I tend to use more the tempo squat as a correction exercise and a lower fatigue exercise as I get into my competition, because I can afford another day of low bar squats without beating me up as much as if I was doing a regular low bar squat. Okay, so that's a wrap for the video. I think it was pretty concise and to the point. Stay tuned for video number 2 on bench press variations, and then video number 3 on deadlift variation.